Hey everyone, this is T-Lore, Matthew again, and today I am taking this ship that we cut out last time, doing a little cleanup on it, as well as putting it together. So the first thing I do, is you'll notice I'm wiping down anywhere that was really engraved to try and get some of the smoke off. You won't really be able to see much of a difference yet, but when it's all done, it really stands out a lot better. So you can compare that one to this one here. You can see that just the words and the engraving stands out. It's a lot sharper. And any of the pieces that I need to bend have to go in water. So this is now soaking in just regular old water. Doesn't take a lot, but if it can soak for a little while, it'll help me be able to bend it very easily. And I've also got to take any of the tape off from last time where I was holding it in place. If I can get this off. It does not want to come off. Anyway, and all I'm doing to clean them up is I'm just taking an old rag with some water and wiping it off over anywhere that needs it. And there's so little smoke it doesn't really smear around, it just comes up. And then I'll put that one in the water as well. So you'll notice on the hull pieces that the grain is running in this direction, and that's important because you can see it's already able to bend a little bit. And if the grain is running in the opposite direction, so if it was running along the hull, it would not bend as easily. And we really need it to bend very easily. With material this thin, we don't really want it to just break. So here I can just tap it out. It comes out. And then I can go along and very quickly just brush the smoke off of it. And I'm starting with the pieces that need to soak so that they can be bent into shape. And then I'll go and work on the pieces that are not as important that way. So that's all the pieces that absolutely have to bend. However, I also do this one because when trying to hook it over the rear pieces, the rear tabs, you do kind of have to bend it out of the way. It doesn't stay bent, and we'll have to do a little bit to keep it from wanting to bend a different direction. But when we're putting it together, we do need it to bend. So this is one piece that you may not expect, but needs to get soaked. So all four of those will sit. I like to give them at least half an hour to soak because then the material's completely soaked. And I'm going to go along and all the rest of these, I'm going to try and just wipe down any of the smoke. So here's the crew chip. This is the first time I've done a crew chip like this on one of these. You can kind of see it's not like super high detail, but wood is more about the grain than about what detail you can engrave on it. If it were larger, we could get a lot more detail out of it.
I'm going to go along and wipe down each of these masks, and I have to be careful not to use too much water or these will also warp and bend along with all the other different pieces. So you can see that really brings out a lot of the detail and takes away the fuzziness of it. So for comparison, here's the same mask. You can see just how much more detail you get. So I'll set that one aside. Now we'll work through on this. Please ignore all the phone sounds. I completely forgot to turn that off, so for the next segment I will get that turned off. So yeah, I'll do some time lapse here so you can just see all these pieces getting wiped down.
Alright, now that I have all these punched out, you'll notice I only cleaned one side, and it's because of the way the laser works, it very rarely will put any dirt or debris on the other side. And I can check that, especially on ones that are right along the edges. But for the most part, only the top side, where the smoke can land and rest, will actually get dirty. So now that I'm done with that, I can set it aside and just let all these pieces dry, and the ones that are in the bath here soak for a little bit. Alright, so these have been soaking for a while. Kind of shake the bubbles off, shake them up, just make sure everything's okay. Now you can see how flexible they are. So this is the pretty much the hardest part of the entire thing, is getting it all put together. So I'm going to lay it out again on just like an old rag, just to try and keep the water from getting everywhere. Dry it up just a little bit. It's still full of water, but some of the surface water doesn't need to be there. And then I should be able to just slide this into the slots. The trouble is, wood grows when it gets wet. So it's going to be very, very difficult to get this in here. Not to mention getting it lined up with all the holes because it has to bend. So this is the scariest part, because if I don't do it right, something will snap or it'll bend over and cause a lot of problems. So you can see I've already got partially in, and this stuff is so soft that it just kind of waves around. If I take too long, it'll dry out too much. So you might be wondering, so now that I've got that piece on there, see it fits pretty well, but it's not great until I get both sides on. And that needs to wait until I get some other pieces in there. So the pieces that are dry fit really easily, but sometimes it depends on the piece of wood how well they fit. Let's see. Unfortunately, this gets to be a little bit tricky because I have to put a single magnet in before I assemble it, or I have no way to actually assemble it. So it's not my preferred way of doing it, but see, I lay it down flat so it has a nice flat surface, and then I can apply a bead of super glue that'll hold it in place. So while that's drying, I can work on getting some of these other pieces put together. So I'm going to put all the sails to one side, and then all the deck pieces will go together. And I think I'm going to have to hold off, at least until that dries a little bit, which won't take too very long. This is definitely the most nerve-wracking part of this entire thing, is getting all of these pieces on before it dries too much. So I do not want to put this in the water built, because it may cause problems. Alright, so now I've got that piece on there, but what I have to do is I have to bend up the back so that this will slide into the slot. This piece out. And it is very, very stiff and tricky to get this to work. Alright, so I got that piece in. Put in the back panel. And this other piece, which is like a mid-deck piece. Now I have the last wooden or wet piece to put on. And this is the absolute hardest piece to put on because you have so many slots. And the wood is starting to get a little bit dry because I got interrupted partway through. And there is no easy way to do this. I was afraid of that piece coming out in the back. So you may also be wondering why I don't use any glue. Well, when the wood is wet like this, the glue just plain won't go where you want it to go. You have to work very quickly. So to try and put wood glue on each of these pieces would be very difficult. And this is pretty much the entire reason I don't send these as kits, is because if somebody tried to do this on their own and one of these pieces failed, they'd be out of components, and it's very, very hard to get this all to line up properly. I think I'm having a little bit of trouble getting these front slots to line up, so I may have to pull this entire piece off, at which is great risk of breaking. I am unfortunately going to have to do the scariest thing I can, which is hammer it into place. Yeah, so that also knocked the magnet out that I glued in a moment ago. So I may be completely recutting this, because I'm going to have to pull this entire piece out. And there's no good way to get to some of these middle slots. You can just see how much this is flexing. Get it back in the water. And I'm also going to have to, oh, that may not be an option. So the magnet has fallen out because the glue had not dried all the way. And at this point it may be quite stuck. No, it is not quite stuck. But it will be very difficult to get it back in this slot. That's why I try to do this before I assemble it. Because now I have no real way to hold it in position. I just have to overglue it and hope that it stays. Another alternative that I have would be to take another piece like this one and hold it in place. So this is definitely the hardest magnet to get on because you don't have any access to the back side. But there's more than one way to try it. Magnets hold great once they get in there and get dried. It's just getting it dried that's tricky. Also, super glue on the fingers happens a ton with this, especially when I just grab the sides like that. Yeah, I'm going to have to pull this entire panel out, and I'm not sure that I can without re-wetting it. Yep, I managed to get it out. So now I've got to put the magnet back in again. At this point I'll use a fresh magnet because that one has so much glue on it. So I will put this on. I'm going to pause the video because I think I have some accelerator that I can try and see if that'll work. Alright, so I got a little bit of this activator accelerator. We'll see what that does. I used it for the first time this morning on a different project and it dried the super glue very quickly. I believe it did here as well. Yeah, that's very hard now. So now you can see how this is turning a very light color because it is getting very dried out.